So I'll be 44 soon, coming up next year in February. And looking back at my life, looking back at those individuals that I visited over the years, that I interviewed over the years, that I promoted over the years, that I listened to over the years, I really shake my head looking at where we are today. Maybe some of you feel the same way as well. Now, I think about the individual known as James Gilliland quite a bit these days. I look at his Facebook page and I see the hate seething from his page, even though he doesn't go on his YouTube channel and seethe with hate. He's obviously seething with hate because, in my opinion, no true love and light individual would ever promote people bearing the Punisher logo, would ever get behind the left-right paradigm and act like they're woke or awake to the Matrix. And this is really a much larger issue. This is about the New Age movement in general, how so much of it was co-opted. And again, I've told you in the past that I was raised in the New Age movement and my mother was highly abusive. And she is not, in her world, in reality, truly free of the illusions of separation program. And so there's a massive deception within the New Age movement. And I would understand if you had some people on the right and some people on the left and some people in the middle, but you mostly have people leaning towards the right and being led by people like Jay-Z Knight, aka Ramtha, Laura Eisenhower, David Icke. Even though he may not see himself as a part of the New Age movement, he absolutely is. And you have James Gilliland. So this is constructive feedback because I'm telling you that I look back on those many times in which I went up to the Isetti Ranch, and there's a lot that could be said here. I'm going to try to condense it. First of all, I don't think that it's intelligent or very smart to go to individuals' property, and some people travel all around the world in order to make contact with lights in the sky. That's as primitive and ooga booga as you can get. When it comes to James Gilliland, who's been on Coast to Coast AM many, many times, which is one of the reasons I don't really trust Coast to Coast AM nor its audience. Not that they ever cared when I went on Coast to Coast AM to talk about the solar flare influence over wars, which we're seeing now, which you won't see on James Gilliland's page. I remember the Coast to Coast website linking to Isetti and him showing a beam of light allegedly coming from a spacecraft into his body. And feeling at the time, at the age of 23, 24, when it was produced in 2003, 2004, that it was absolutely photoshopped. That's not really how things work. That's something that only fools would buy into. And there are other photographs that he has produced over the years that he claimed were the manifestations of ascended masters onto his property in Trout Lake, Washington, when in fact we're talking about paintings. And some people have actually written about this and linked to his original YouTube video in which he made these claims, and those videos have been removed. There are other things that I know about James, that other people have spoken about James with regards to his relationship with women, but we'll leave it there. We'll just leave it there. Because now we're getting in the area of speculation. But I remember how James looked at my friend Patricia when we were up there. And Patricia's the one that, if there is something to the idea of shapeshifters or reptilian hybrids, of all the women that I've been with over the years that actually embraced the dark side after being with me, Qanon, the system, she would be one of them. And so when it surprised me that someone like James would be eyeballing somebody like her. I went up there many times, took a lot of women up there. I really could have gone somewhere else, but, when you don't really know people in the countryside, you don't really have friends to go hang out with, and you're into conspiracies and you're into alien theories, and someone purports to be an ascended master, a teacher, and to have a place that's basically an energy center of love and light, of course it's going to attract somebody like me, stuck in a hellhole like Portland, Oregon. Many, many times, I just want to get out of Portland, Oregon. I just want to be able to go somewhere and camp for a night. And so, in many, many times, on many, many weekends, I made a beeline up to the James Gilliland Ranch. I actually got lost many, many times, but eventually found my way there. Honestly, I never really felt like the guy liked me very much. towards the latter part of the time. Remember him and William Henry looking me up and down in 2011. Maybe it's because I didn't pay a large amount, like $50 to park my car. I admit I didn't. Guilty as charged, right? So I'll be accountable for that. But I think it was something else, and now I understand what it is. You see, well, James Gilliland might act like he's aware of the New World Order. Well, he might act like he's aware of 9/11. Well, he might act like he cares about Palestinians, just like everybody else in the conspiracy theory movement that is not really thinking for themselves. He has pure hatred for anyone with Afghani blood. In the world of James Gilliland, there is no good Afghani. So if you take a look at his Facebook posts, he exaggerates with fake news the amount of Afghani immigrants coming across the border. And even if there are many, look at what the Taliban is doing, that Joe Biden allowed the Taliban to stay in power. So people are treating these people like they're not even full human beings. And I know something about that. And I've talked about my own experiences, right? Time and time again. So I want to keep this focused on this. But if you're new to my work, check out my other videos. Check out my 66 questions for my audience and put yourself in my shoes. Have you been in my shoes? Have you covered the things that I've covered? Have you warned of China and Russia? And we look at James, and he's doing what Alex Jones is doing. Alex Jones, by the way, was on Russian state TV last month doing a brief Google search. And so we see this blind worship of Putin. And they act like they're about protecting women from immigrants, when one day we could deal with China and Russia marching on America and involved in human trafficking. And so it's really popular to get involved in racial supremacy ideology, anti-Themism, Islamophobia, and people lick it up. It's like that Kiss song, lick it up, lick it up. Oh, it's actually quite disgusting, and I'm going to speak about it. And in the future, when things come to pass, when China and Russia do attack America, they're going to look at the conspiracy theory movement and see how co-opted it was in the direction of Russia. And so we have James Gilliland and the woman or man, or is it an it? I'm not really sure, known as Ramtha, both putting out these false messages about the ascended masters, basically giving Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin the thumbs up. And the level of intelligence of the people that follow these individuals is basically in the toilet. Even though a lot of these people think that they are so superior to the third world, so supreme, in my opinion, they're showing themselves as barely able to function and think for themselves as they copy and paste, copy and paste. So when we look at the James Gilliland Facebook page, nearly everything that he posts is false, maybe 95% false. The elections, of course, are rigged. And so there's no point in getting involved in the left-right paradigm and acting like you're awake to the matrix while worshiping Donald Trump. And to be honest with you, I don't really appreciate Trump supporters watching my content because you're not showing me that you're learning anything from me. Here's a post here. No one needs to be less white, black, or brown. Please just focus on being less dumb. Okay, so that's some sort of a meme saying you can be what you are. Unless, of course, you're an Afghani immigrant. Then in that case, you're a threat to the women of the world. And what I've done as someone of that blood, 1/4 of that blood, is try to stand up for real women's rights without getting involved in neo-feminism and gender divides. Nor have I shown an interest in dominating women or manipulating women into being in relationships with me. I rather just abstain. But unlike James, who is somewhat of a horn dog himself, he acts like he's some great ascended master, when he himself, if you talk to a lot of the women that have been up to his ranch, they have their own story to tell. What I've been through isn't so pretty. When I worked for a place called the Portland Preparedness Center in 2011 and 10, I came up with the name. I came up with the then phone number, 252-5252-777. And I worked for a man by the name of Michael, who was connected with Richard from survivalcenter.com. And they used me and abused me. And to talk about that would take a much longer time. But there was a very abusive experience. And it turns out that Michael made a documentary for James Gilliland called Contact Has Begun. But for whatever reason, Michael chose to keep his name out of it. You can find this documentary on Amazon, and the reviews aren't very good. Richard, who brought Michael into the situation to control me and eventually use me and throw me away. Of course, I quit when I realized what was going on. I lived in the back of the store for months for free, and I only walked out of there with about $1,000 for about 4 to 5 months worth of work. Richard made it seem like it was going to be my store. And both Richard and Michael, who used and abused me, including psychologically, put down the fact that I had crystals. I'm sure James Gilliland has crystals. But you see, when you're dealing with people that are truly white supremacists in their heart, when they deal with a short brown man who has ancestry from the lands which they think they have a right to bomb and destroy, while they cry for the Palestinians, pure hypocrites. Because the Palestinians, folks, hello McFly, are Muslim in many cases. And in some cases, you have pushback against Israel in the form of Hamas, which some people are cheering on. I'm cheering on nobody in this situation. The killing must stop. The killing of the Palestinians must stop, but it's not going to stop. And so the only reason you see protests right now with regards to Palestine is because there are people in the world that say these people's lives matter. Palestinian lives matter. You'll never see Black Lives Matter say Afghan lives matter. And yet you have a lot of people out there that don't believe the official story of 9/11. But there's truly something satanic going on, is what I'm telling you, in the New Age movement. For New Agers, if they're truly tapped into the light and truly calling things accurately, not only to not predict 9/11 before it happened, but to not call out the 9/11 inside job as it happened in the years afterwards, and then to demonize all the Afghan refugees. And so in a future report, I'll talk to you a little bit about Afghan history, but you will never see James Gilliland, who supposedly is in the heart, who supposedly has the beam of light coming down from the Pleiadian ship, ever speak about those people. And so Americans in the modern day New Age movement are nothing short of Satanists and followers of fallen angels. And so Ramtha was giving spiritual guidance to both Michael and Richard, who used and abused me at the Portland Preparedness Center. And Ramtha influenced them in great, great ways into thinking that major cataclysms were going to happen in 2011 and 2012. And so they were involved in brainwashing me into thinking that there is no tomorrow. There is only the next year, and then after that, everything is going to be destroyed. So with that ideology and that mentality, they thought we basically have a right to mark up our product and to try to convince people to pay a large amount for the survival buckets for various products, because of course there is no time left. I remember having a conversation with Steve Shank of eFoods Direct, and he told me the same thing. There is no time left. And I'm like, are you sure? I think there's a few years left. There's no more time left. And because I wouldn't go along with the way he was trying to program me, he ended the phone call. He'd rather deal with an Alex Jones, who's going to play the song from The Doors at the time in his bumper music. This is the end. Beautiful friend. This is the end. And they act like they're love and light. Ramtha herself has been caught on a hot mic by one of her followers in a drunken rant, ranting about, I believe, blacks and Mexicans. And Ramtha has enough power to make sure that there is no trace of that audio recording anywhere. And the thing about these individuals, whether it be Clyde in Portland, which I'm all about restoring diplomatic ties with, but Clyde Lewis was not very nice to me in 2009, in 2010. And so there's some unresolved things between Clyde and me. I tweeted at him multiple times on Twitter. Feel free to take a look at my Twitter. Also a recent post that I made at alexansary.substack.com, copy and pasting some of what I said on Twitter. Coffee is one hell of a drug, especially if you haven't had coffee in a while. And the thing is, I'm all about restoring ties with Clyde if that's what he wants, but I don't believe that that's what he wants. When they were done using me, these individuals who were inspired by Ramtha, who Clyde Lewis is also tied in with, as well as James Gilliland, as Clyde Lewis has had on the content creators of the movie, What the Bleep Do We Know, who were actually students of Ramtha. Clyde Lewis moved in after I left the Portland Preparedness Center and brought Michael into the radio station to do his own prepper radio show. And it's like they wouldn't even known about Clyde unless I told them about Clyde. Even though Clyde took the microphone out of my hand at a 2009 9/11 event when I said, let's have a moment of silence for the victims of war, Clyde's like, I'm not going to be silent. I'm going to keep flapping my lips. And that hurt my feelings because here I am at this 9/11 event in the flesh going, you guys are talking about 9/11, but 9/11 was used to kill millions of people. Fast forward to where we are now, we look at the people around Clyde Lewis, we look at the people that follow James Gilliland, we look at the people that are following Ramtha, we look at Laura Eisenhower, we look at others. None of them care about the millions that have been sacrificed. But yet they show an awareness of what's happening to Palestine, but not really a full awareness that this is a sacrifice, that it's not really about Jews being behind this, but a spirit of evil that happens to be using those that call themselves Jews, that happen to be in the nation of Israel. Clyde Lewis, by the way, told me that Alex Jones was white trash when I stood up to Antifa, also known as a black bloc at the time, when they were trashing Portland, Oregon. And nobody stood with me, not any Joey Gibson, not anybody else in the alternative media, by myself with my own megaphone with a guy by the name of David, who later got into Flat Earth, so he doesn't see anything in my content now, which is why Flat Earth is so destructive, folks, because it will turn people against you if you do not get on board the 14th, 15th century mindset. That's pretty freaking sad, because I hung out a lot with David. David filmed me megaphoning the black bloc and the destruction they were involved in. And to me, I was suspicious of them basically being agent provocateurs, to be frank. Maybe I was listening to too much Alex Jones at the time. And Clyde Lewis calls me up and says Alex Jones is white trash when Alex Jones put my video on his website, at least for a day. Then I think he took it down. I think his staff put it up thinking, this is great. Alex Ansary is calling out Antifa in Portland, Oregon, and then it mysteriously vanished from the website. Of course, I asked Alex Jones in 2007 in my interview with him in November, what did he think about Israel at the end of the interview? And he didn't like that very much. Made him angry. Shouldn't have been so angry. Just a question, dude. Just a question. What do you think about Israel, Alex Jones? What do you think about Israel? So Michael, in recent years, has been creating a number of ebooks on Amazon, basically taking these alleged channeled information from Ramtha, also known as Jay-Z Knight, in which she's talking about these Trump prophecies of Trump bringing world peace. I haven't read the books myself, but there's a basic synopsis. And it's very similar to these fake channeled messages, allegedly from the Galactic Federation of Light. So they're not even very original with what they're saying. There's many people out there that allegedly are being talked to by these spirits. I hope you understand where I'm going with this, and then we'll bring it back to whatever James Gilliland is tapping into on his ranch, if he in fact is dealing with aliens and not satellites in the sky. And there's debate about that. But it's like there are so many people that are saying that these aliens are ascended, and they're saying that Putin and Trump are bringing us world peace. And while conspiracy theorists deny the Russian connection behind Trump, people like this actually celebrate it. People like James Gilliland actually celebrate it. And they act like they stand up for women while giving Russia a pass, when Russia has done a lot to desecrate the feminine. I've talked about pornography in past videos and why I don't think that men of God should consume that trash. And there's a lot of that trash that comes out of Russia. And again, when the Soviet Union invaded Nazi Germany, a lot of them brutally raped the German women. And I would say that they did not deserve that. So in our society, where a lot of the whites and Caucasians act like they're so superior to the less white world and act like they're so against racism, In many cases, they act like they're the great white saviors, and the rest of the world is a bunch of barbarians, when in reality, we look at their track record, including their false predictions that never come true, constantly claiming that they are channeling the ascended masters or working with certain aliens. This includes David Wilcock and his blue avian alien theory. And so when we look at Clyde in Portland, Oregon, Ramtha in Yelm, Washington, James Gilliland in Trout Lake, Washington, Michael, who's also somewhere in Washington, and then you have Richard, who's in Washington. They're all connected. They're all connected. They are all influential. They all have a cult following. And in the end, it appears that they are channeling fallen angels. When I left the Portland Preparedness Center, just so you know the rest of the story, Michael decided to call the Portland police in case I decided to get revenge on him for what he did to me. So he filed a report and changed the locks on the door because he was afraid I would do something to him because of what he did to me. I had the idea to have the Bob Felix event. This is a guy that's all popular in the Grand Solar Minimum movement, which is connected with my previous video. How it's like Satan is behind the Grand Solar Minimum psychosis, convincing people that the sun is dying. There's going to be major cataclysms from a lack of solar activity, crop failures, when in reality we're having a massive solar cycle, and it is in relation to the wars that is taking place, not only in Russia and Ukraine, but the possible upcoming war with Taiwan, China, and Taiwan, with the U.S. potentially intervening. And then we have what's happening now in Gaza, and I told you accurately that we would see major world events after the last eclipse. I was right. Did James Gilliland ever warn about events after the eclipse? Nearly everything on his page is false. And so these people have an allegiance to each other. Clyde is more interested in terrifying his audience and entertaining his audience and speaking with that deep radio voice. I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. By the way, his last name is Lewis. My grandmother Ruth, her last name is Lewis. So when I told her I knew a guy named Lewis, a light bulb went off above her head and it's like, well, are we related to him? Well, you might be, my last name's Lewis. So it's like, because of that Anglicide that I have, it's like I may have had a deep connection with many of these people. Who knows how many distant relatives I have that are actually in the audience? Who knows how many haters I have are distant relatives that have a blood tie to me? So my point here is this. I've talked to you about anti-Themism, which is superseding Islamophobia, but it's a hate of certain people from certain countries, even if they're Christian and they're American born. It's a hate of them anyways, while the Palestinians get a pass, even though they're Muslim, even though they have their own alleged violent extremism. So what is it about the Afghan blood that makes them want to barf in the toilet so badly? Let me know down in the comment section if anything is firing here. There are some theories, by the way, that some people have that the true Jews are in the Middle East. Not only the Palestinians, but some of the tribes in Afghanistan. I'm just going to leave it at that. Some say that Jesus was Middle Eastern, although many blacks will say he was black. So there's debate on that. But the truth is, whites, Latinos, Asians, various groups, whites, blacks, Latinos, Asians, other Arabic groups, East Indians, they all have this deep, deep hatred of the Afghan refugee. And despite the fact that I've tried to reach out to these people with regards to my 9/11 information, being planet Earth's only 9/11 truther, that is who you're watching on a planet of 8 billion. But so many people will watch my content over the years. Wow, Alex, that's amazing stuff. You're like nobody else. Once they find out about my heritage, not only do they reject me in many cases, but the algorithm suppresses me. If I kept that, throw away the key. If I would have kept that under wraps and I didn't get involved in conspiracy theory, perhaps I could have been someone as successful as Zoe Ansari with 11 million likes. on YouTube, especially if I got into right-wing politics. And I've never stood up for the victims of war. And I only exposed 9/11 from a right-wing conspiracy perspective, which does not have any concern for Afghan history. But because I have a soul, and I want you to raise the voltage of your own soul, I'm going to say these things. And I want my videos to survive the fires. I want my words to survive what is to come, which means a lot of what I have been through needs to be put into a book. But as I told you about anti-Themism, getting back to that, which supersedes Islamophobia, we have the switch programming where all of a sudden you have the hate. It's like the haters ball from Chappelle's show. And all of a sudden these people are being made to be the enemy all over again. And so we have anti-Themism. We have the switch programming. And we have the network, where individuals are basically saying the same thing, acting like they're getting divine inspiration from the gods, from the ascended masters. And they seem to be agents on the ground of the matrix, so to speak. And the people are so retarded in mass that these people have massive followings. And you can't find any criticism of these individuals. You have to look very, very hard to find any criticism of these individuals or anybody calling them out. And I'm here to tell you that with an entity controlling AI, I'm here to tell you that I don't think that it's an accident, that after years and years of their fake predictions, despite the fact there's so many people on the left that are opposed to Donald Trump, and these people are all batting for Donald Trump, you don't see any of these white leftists in Antifa saying a damn thing about these other white deceivers. Because these white people in Antifa are not really pushing back against white supremacy. They are white supremacists themselves. In Portland, Oregon right now, you've got righteous, self-righteous white people smashing windows, spray painting on the city of Portland's glass doors about Israel. Israel must be stopped. Just like those violent protests back in the day, right? It made no sense to me even then how they could even think that the city of Portland somehow has the power, let alone the will, but the power and the means to stop the global military industrial complex, also known as the New World Order. It doesn't work that way. Mayor Ted Wheeler is a scumbag and was involved in Top Off 4 in 2007, but he has no power. The people in Portland, Oregon, they're only able to take care of the management of their own city, if that. And really not even that. And so for people to act like it's okay to engage in property destruction because of what Israel is doing, or because of the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan or Iraq, if they really are so opposed to white supremacy, again, there are black people and white people that would talk about their plight. So treat me like a human being. Understand my plight. There's no reason, if they were against white supremacy, why they would let me stay in the streets when I was there, when I came to them for help, when I spoke on Access TV. And so the vast majority of the human species, folks, is absolutely taken over by evil. There is no ascension in our society right now. Fascism really is taking over. And it's taken over on the left in so many ways, and it's taking over on the right in so many ways. And so when you see people reposting content from someone with the Punisher logo, demonizing all Afghan refugees, engaging in Putin worship and Trump worship, and claiming that they're talking to the gods, and talking about how the Anunnaki, some of them are really good guys. Like when you get into the ideology and what James Gilliland has been saying over the years, he's actually been giving credence to these alien masters. When I was at his ranch, he actually made a statement that, you know, I like Alex Jones, but they're always making these aliens out to be the bad guys, when in fact, there's a lot of good guys. There's a big mistake, and people like my mother and others thinking that it's a good idea to hang out with people that channel aliens, or to engage in driving up to places like Banff, Canada, in order to make contact with lights in the sky. I was very uncomfortable about that trip to Canada. And to this day, not only would my mother not speak to me directly, because now I'm asserting myself, and she'd rather me be some sort of individual in a stupor, right? That's the being that she's drawn to. A man that doesn't speak up for himself. A man who can barely speak, period, because he's depressed. And so it's a red flag for a lot of people to want to make contact with these beings and know nothing about them. On the other hand, there's no guarantee in reality that these are really alien ships anyways at James's ranch. There's a lot of people out there that question his narrative and if he is really in fact telling the truth in light of all the satellite technologies. Now there's people out there that will tell people, hey, SpaceX just released this rocket ship from this location in Texas, or this location in California, or this location wherever else Elon Musk is operating out of. And they'll be like, no, man, no, this was totally a half hour after that. This totally was probably some alien thing. So they're looking at the sky for evidence of the alien agenda, yet they have an allegiance to the military-industrial complex themselves. And they're unable to see the alien agenda in their wars, in their occupation in Afghanistan and Iraq, in the rise of neo-Nazism, in the rise of the Black Sun worship, as opposed to the true solar gnosis, which you're not going to get from David Wilcock, which you're not going to get from Kerry Cassidy, which you're not going to get from Laura Eisenhower, which you're not going to get from James Gilliland. So what we're really dealing with, folks, are the new Nazis, who will be silent about the modern Jews being marched into the ovens, being drone striked, being killed by the millions, and maybe later on being put into camps once a number of false flags come into manifestation. So I have a lot of knowledge, folks. I've shared with you a lot of that knowledge so far, but there is still so much more to share. But yeah, I regret going up to James Gilliland's ranch so many times, because when you do that and you hang around areas where there may be fallen angel Nephilim energy, you can come onto a radar yourself without even knowing it, just by being at the wrong place at the wrong time, while being a true child of God, a true light being. Because these evil forces that are out there manipulating people, putting the voices in the head, convincing people that they are advanced beings of light, that they are advanced teachers, when people like me come around them in their midst or on their property, we can end up coming under attack ourselves.
But one man in Trout Lake, Washington, claims that alien spacecraft have been appearing over his property every night for 13 years.
Things happen here. It's like a field of dreams. And everything from light spheres appearing to people, what they call orbs, to ships flying over the field.
James Gilliland owns a spiritual retreat center in the shadow of Mount Adams. And yes, you heard right, he claims to have seen alien ships up close and personal. He has made UFOs his business, and people travel to his property every night to catch a glimpse of the foreign objects. And he says they are not disappointed.
The ships coming here have come in every size, shape, and color you can imagine. We've had pink ones, green ones, blue ones, purple ones, yellow, golden ones. We've seen just about everything, or up to even flying pyramids, ships that look like pyramids. So the ships we've seen, there's just so many of them, and they're so diverse. There's no way it could be, you know, some back-engineered project or something like that.
Now here is footage that we shot the night we traveled to his farm. Although the camera is shaky, the objects in the sky appear to be moving very fast and also seem to glow at various different times. Gilliland says the sheer numbers tells us we're not alone.
Well, the universe is vast, because if you take, you know, the 200 billion suns just in this little Milky Way galaxy with planets evolving around them, and then you add that the 500 billion galaxies that are just like this one out there, It's so vast and it's inhabited, and there's beings that are thousands, millions, even billions of years ahead of us.
Now, he understands there are skeptics and even people who want to prove him wrong, so he has invited many critics to observe the phenomenon themselves.
We have tribal police on record, we have triple PhD Boeing engineers, Air Force base commanders, the list goes on, pilot, air traffic controllers, and thousands of people have come here and have seen the ships, and we have so much evidence, it's just a mountain of evidence. You know, any reasonable mind would have to say there's something fantastic going on here.
One of these critics even went on record saying, quote, "The two objects were apparently round with a reddish-orange glow. Movement of the objects were erratic and discontinuous. They appeared to move independently, circling and changing places in relation to one another." And just like many other UFO true believers, he claims that the government plays a role in hiding information, even going so far to say is that our technological advances came from the alleged UFO crash in Roswell.
The government's had an extreme role in keeping this information from coming out. It goes back even before Roswell, goes back to the 30s. But they've actually had interactions, and they've actually connected with low-level contacts and worked with them and cleaned technology from the ETs themselves and also the crash sites and things of that nature. Fiber optics, microwave, the computer chip, all of that stuff came, you know, out of Roswell, basically, that went to Bell Labs and was disseminated from there on out.
But when we showed our footage to astronomer and UFO skeptic Bernard Haish, he had a very different take on what we saw in the sky.
Here you see something moving through the star field. It's bouncing around because of the camera. It's really moving very steadily with respect to the stars. And it's moving at the kind of rate you'd expect from a satellite in the sky. This could be the International Space Station, for example. There are lots of satellites in the sky. There are thousands of them. And only the brightest ones are the ones you can see with your naked eye. But there are lots of things in the sky. If you're paying attention to the sky at all, you're bound to see one.
Everybody's got a price. Everybody's gonna pay. 'Cause the $1 Million Man